Looks like we're beautifully set up. All right, going live.
All right.
Yep. All right. There we go. Fixed it. Hello, everybody. Pardon for the delay. We had some minor technical issues. I always like to say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we feel more professional when we say that, like in the big, awards or Oscar awards or whatever. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining and for staying with us. And yeah, sorry for the delay. Pardon once more. So I'm here today with Diederik, and we'll go through a few things that we have been discussing in the past, but I will go and make get that into practice. So over the few past live streams, that's what we were saying earlier, Diederik, is that we actually have been discussing quite a lot on, the headless architecture and, the NextJS boilerplate, how you could individually launch that and how you could launch the service API that we have as a standalone. But today we would like to see and show maybe the full round trip of launching and both the service API and the selected frontend, right? And how we can make that work, right? So it's
Yeah, looking forward to this as well. Looking forward to learn something. I am not that proficient in the API, so that will be great to see. Or awesome. Service API, that's it called.
So, and my idea for the concept that we can follow today, and of course to notify the rest of the guys that are watching, is that, all right, we'll go through the process of installing the boilerplate, make sure that, and we will go through the default steps, right? So as you know, the CLI is going through some steps. We will install that locally, and then we can, of course, check that everything is set up and it works. Then we can launch locally and run the service API again with default, default keys and default tenants, etc. So default setup, and then we will slowly iterate and change a few of this stuff until we finally have our both of these deployed on Vercel and they're live, and essentially we have a live web shop that is following all the best parts of a headless architecture, right?
Yes. Are we going to add any payment providers this time as well, Storos?
Yeah, I think so, that we can show how easy it is to include one of the payment providers, like Stripe, which is what we typically do here. And of course, this happens to be the credentials I have laying around. So
this is, of course, something that we get asked quite often, is that, okay, I have installed the boilerplate, but the add to basket button doesn't work, or the payment doesn't work.
Yes,
so
exactly.
What Storos will show today is how to make this work, basically, by deploying it to Vercel and adding different environmental keys. And I'll ask a lot of questions, hopefully. And you guys, I will monitor the chat as well. So if you guys have any questions while we are in the process here, just ask us.
Yeah.
And I'll see it and I'll ask Cyrus.
100%. Go for it.
Yeah.
All right. So first things first, touching a bit upon the headless architecture. So what we're trying to do here. So what we're doing with Crystallize is that we provide the service, as you know, to handle all your product information and all your content in a single place, as well as the place to be. This will be the place also to handle all the e-commerce processes, like placing an order and handling the stages, right? So it's a complete detached headless service. So the idea with the entire stack that we've been talking about over the past live streams, and we very cementally believe in, is that when you want to go live with a solution, or you're building something from scratch, then you want to select the best breed of its stack that you want to be using, right? So if I'm using something for my user authentication, then I want a great service that does exactly what I'm doing and exactly what I want. And same goes with many more things. Real-time tax calculation on checkout, shipping providers, etc. The list goes on. infinitely. So
exactly.
yeah,
I see that we already have our first question here about the payment providers.
cool.
We'll talk more about that later. And who would like us to mention a PayPal integration?
Yes, for sure. That's so. As most of you know, what we have been doing in Crystallize is we like to push out open source, let's say, components that you can use, not plug and play, but tweak and match exactly what you want to be doing. So this goes for the payment gateways and any other kind of integration that we're going to be doing. So payment providers like PayPal is one of the things that we're adding in the list, and we'll be continuing to add more and more of these open source integrations as we go forward. We're actually compiling a list as we speak as to what we should be tackling next. So yeah, thumbs up on that one. I think it's it's a really big one for everyone, right?
Yeah, it is. And of course, we'll add different integration as they come. And PayPal is, of course, one of the bigger ones.
Yes.
As you can see, that Starbucks is showing now. We have 4 already set up integrations, basically, that there are examples on in the Service API.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, exactly.
So these are basically ready to use. If you just add your tenant ID and tenant identifier, which we will show, you will be able to add these payments. And like you said, PayPal is on the list.
Yes, exactly. All right, so let's get started really quickly. So what we have now, we're in the open source section of Crystallize Learn page, right? So it's under Learn open source. As you can see, we have a list of boilerplates, which touch upon that, the previous times where we went through installing each of these. So we'll be working today with the React and Next.js one, eCommerce, which you're probably very familiar with, and the one that we're calling Service API, so the middleware that connects the different services that you guys are using and will be using in your solution. So we'll use the CLI, the Crystallize CLI, to install these locally, and we will follow the process, at least a nice and easy way, a smooth way from development environment to production, right? So cool. Let's go to the Next.js boilerplate, and as we see here, we got to get started as a first step, right? So let's copy. Let's copy the CLI command. And sorry about that. Sorry about clicking everywhere.
That's just how it is.
Yeah, that's how it is. I just want to find my terminal. So I'll go to my terminal, and I will just start with my frontend project.
Could you zoom it in a bit?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Plus, just so we can see everybody. Thanks
for letting me know. So I think this would be okay, right? A bit more, maybe. Yeah, awesome. So I will just go for my front-end project here, and essentially I would typically run this both, correct? So one, it would be to fetch my Next.js boilerplate, and one would be for my Service API. So all right, let's go with this guy.
Yeah.
And
so now we are.
Yeah, sorry.
Now we are using the CLI to fetch our boilerplates, basically, or to get started with the development. But I also see that we do have a question in YouTube here that after we have installed the boilerplate, could we also show how to create a fresh Crystallize tenant and how you add the new identifier instead of the furniture boilerplate?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the process we're going to show.
Perfect.
That's where we're going.
All right. I'm just running ahead and spoiling everything.
Thank you. All right. So the CLI has run, and now it prompts us to, of course, select our selected boilerplate, our preferred boilerplate. So, like I said, we're going to be using this one and the Service API one, right? So let's go with Next.js, and I will use only the default things. So we start from step 1 all the way to production. So I would go with demo tenant. I will not select multiple languages. I will go for my demo API or our demo API, Crystallize, which is live already. It's set up. So let's go for this guy. And this, of course, downloads and installs all the packages. Of course, if you want as a reference, there is a link in the description as to where to find the previous YouTube live stream. So, all right, let's stop that. We don't need to do that. I have set it up already here. So that is exactly where you're prompted. Sorry.
So what you did now was that you just stopped it because you have installed all the dependencies before.
Exactly. So maybe I'm talking a bit too fast.
I'll just stop you whenever.
yeah. So essentially, I just stopped the CLI command because I already, just like Didrik said, have run it beforehand because it takes some time to download and install the npm packages. To save some time, and then I will just go and run yard dev just to run something locally, and we see that everything is set up. And I want to remind you that, of course, this is only following the default configuration. So as you can see here, this is actually the code of the project, the next frontend project. So if I go all the way down here in my environment file, this is where I keep the boilerplate has, of course, all the environmental configurations, which are basically two. It's which tenant identifier I'm using and which service API I am talking to, let's say, right? So I refer to.
Basically what you see here, the tenant identifier. This is what connects your frontend to the PIM or the UI that we have as a service.
Exactly. So you essentially, you just define from which tenant in Crystallize you want to fetch the data, right? So my product and contact information. And the next and the service API we'll touch upon in a bit, but this is essentially your middleware that connects to Crystallize and passes through the orders, or maybe connects to different services like SendGrid or things like that for emails, for shipping, etc., etc.
Also, an important part here is that the service API is not the same as our catalog API. This is not where you are going to fetch all your products that you create inside of Crystallize. But the service API will help you integrate with, for example, Stripe or different payment providers, or SendGrid, like Starbucks is talking about.
Exactly. So this should have run, hopefully. Looks okay. So after you, of course, access your localhost 3000 port, you should be prompted with the exact implementation of what you'd see in the furniture.superfast.shop. So our live example, basically, right? And now we have checked that, all right, everything is working properly. We know that we are able to connect to our Crystallize tenant, or what? Scratch that, sorry, to the public Crystallize tenant, and then we have essentially managed to set up something completely fine. All right, so I think that as a next step, we can, of course, go through and create an order real quick, just to see, the round trip. And I think this is the round trip we're going to be following usually. So I will be setting up an order, making sure that this is reflected in the backend. Because essentially this process passes from all steps of the way, from posting the products and viewing the products in my boilerplate, to purchasing that through the middleware, so through the service API, all the way to viewing that and accessing that in the backend system, which is Crystallize. So let's just add here some stuff. I will go with Stripe.
Quick thing here, because now what you're doing is basically talking to the service API, right?
Yes, correct.
And now we're talking to our demo, the one that we have deployed. So whenever someone is going to use this boilerplate, you should create your own, because of course you won't get the payments through this, because they're just test cases.
Exactly. But this is like the steps I would just recommend taking. So I know that my boilerplate now is running locally after I see my process order verification. There we go. So my order is confirmed. So I have, I'm sure now that my boilerplate is running as a first step. All right, cool. So this is running, beautiful. All right, so now that I know that my boilerplate is running, the next step is to manage to run my own service API. So make sure that my service API is running locally and it's running correctly, right? So what I'll do is I will start again with my CLI here. Let's just refresh that just to be on top for people to see. And I will go for my backend or my service API You can call that middleware, let's say. All right, so again, the same process. I will run the CLI, and I will just go in and install the Service API boilerplate. Again, as you probably have imagined, I have already run that locally. But just to show you that, again, we will be following the standard setup, nothing spectacular. So I will just use several Vercel, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to interrupt you like I always do. Just one thing is that even though you might not see all the options, there are more further down below, because now we have a pretty low window, terminal window, so we don't see all the options. But believe us when we say that it is there, if you just scroll down.
Exactly, I've zoomed in a bit to make it a bit more, visible. So again, I will just go through, just mentioning once more, standard options, nothing spectacular. So now it downloads and fetches all the NPM packages, dependencies. And when you're finally there, you will be prompted with your own service API. So if I run yarn dev here, let me just stop consuming my beautiful memory. So if I run yarn dev here, I should be prompted with my API. Now I know that this is locally running. Then I can access that if I go here and in my API GraphQL /API/GraphQL, I know that this is my API, and I can validate that this is working, right? Cool. So as another step, we can very easily make that work, our local setup of the service API. I can make that work with my boilerplate. So how do I do that? I just go here, and I just change this guy for this one. So just change my reference, the service API reference, from the public one to the one that is running on my computer, right? And since we have updated the environment variables in the environment file, I will need to restart the server to get this environment variable when it initially runs. So let me just do another clean yarn dev here.
You also saw that when you installed the service API, it also prompted for the tenant identifier.
Yes,
and that's because,
exactly.
yes, you have the boilerplate, and that fetches all the products and catalogs and folders or whatever from Crystallize to render them and to display them. But the service API will also need to talk to our backends.
Yes.
To Crystallize to be able to manage orders. And the reason, do you want to talk about the reason why we have a middleware and we don't do everything in the front end because of tokens, etc.?
Yes, so it's quite a few reasons, right? Of course, it's a best practice to essentially decouple the business logic from the front ends, especially if you're dealing with frameworks like NextJS, which essentially allows even functions, serverless functions to run in your front end. Let's say, then you don't have a clear separation as to which system does what. So if I want to have like more business specific rules like stock management connection to my ERPs, I don't want necessarily to do that in my front end. I want a dedicated service that can handle sync between these systems, for instance. And of course, just like you said, I want a central place to have all my tokens that will not be available publicly, obviously. So this is a few of the benefits of having this decoupled kind of system. And of course, it's really easy. That's part of the headless approach, where I can just remove one of the services and plug another one without disrupting the entire rest of the architecture.
Cool.
Awesome. So if I load again here, now this guy is running on my, sorry for blinking too much, running on my locally deployed service API. All right, cool. So just to verify that the process is going smoothly, all right, let's do another purchase here. It will be the same steps as previously. So this is a bit slow. It's NextJS.
That's just because you have it local.
Yeah. NextJS locally is not the super fastest, but building statically everything.
I guess you can also open the terminal later on when you add the basket, because we are verifying the basket as well, right?
Yeah. So this process goes through the Service API actually. So we will go through the code, a little bit of the Service API when we change the.
If you open the terminal, I guess you can see something happening there.
Here.
No, not that terminal. The terminal where
you mean the terminal like this terminal?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. I don't think that the console logs everything.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, let's see. Did I do something wrong here?
I don't know.
You don't know? Let's see. I have my cart. Looks good. So this is console.
Yeah. Now we're on to live debugging, which is always good.
Yeah. So let me just refresh that. Well, this is part of the process, right? So it's, I mean, it's nice that we troubleshoot that live. All right, so let's ask the basket real quick. So, okay, I see an error here. And I would suggest that, all right, so it says here that my environment variable Crystallize access token identifier is not set, which is, of course, something that I should have done, right? So I have not, just like Didrik said, I have not set up my environment variables for my backend. So,
of course.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's what happens.
Of course.
So again, if I open the code of my Service API, I have two files here. One is the environment variable, and one is for the local development, right? So if I want to use a separate token for my development and for my production environments. So if I want to develop locally, but I still want to use my Crystallize, as I probably should, my Crystallize tenant, I will have my two tokens. So I will go through the process of creating a pair of tokens, Didrik?
Yeah, do that.
Right, beautiful. Okay, so all right, cool. Let's jump here real quick. All right, so this is my Crystallize admin page. That's what you guys are prompted after you sign up, right? So if I go over to settings, I have a section here called access tokens. And this is essentially the API tokens for you to connect to Crystallize programmatically. So this is what the Service API essentially is asking for. So if I generate a token, this will be my J token or whatever, or not token, secret token. So if I generate a token here, I have an access ID, an identifier, and an access token secret. So this is what exactly I am using. I will be copy pasting that in my backend. So this is generated. It's stored here. It's safe for you to use. And this is what I'm adding here. So I'm adding the identifier and the Crystallize access token that I just created. And now this, sorry.
Just of course, this is personalized tokens, and you will delete yours after this live stream.
Yeah. Well, people can, yeah, for sure. If they're looking to get it, to get access to my Crystallize backend, then it's I don't know.
But also you can see that we have already placeholders or names for Klarna, for Stripe, Vipps, SendGrid, etc. And as long as these are ready-made payment providers, so as long as you provide the tokens for your payment provider here, they will show up in the boilerplate as well.
Yes,
when you have connected to your Service API, of course.
Yes, and this is a perfect touch point, because that's exactly what you said. So you can choose, for instance, what we're going to be doing today is going to be using this guy here. So we're going to be using Stripe. If you want to add like an email service like SendGrid, then you just add your SendGrid API key here. And remember to just, if you're working locally, always relaunch the application so that you get the environment variables updated. So now that I have this thing up here, so let me refresh that. Beautiful page. And beautiful page, Didrik. It was for you. Compliments.
Well, right? Thank you. Well, thank you.
And now I have managed to add my item to the basket, to my cart. So that was quick. It was just me that forgot to get my tokens up. So again, let's go through the process. Oh, let's go. Oh yeah, of course. Sorry about that. Totally forgot. But we just talked about it, man.
Yeah,
So,
no, but this is a perfect example just to show that, okay, you have the input fields and you are connected to Crystallize, but we did not provide any payment providers tokens.
Exactly. Perfect.
And let's just say that's because we don't want to show our Stripe tokens on a live stream.
Exactly.
But as soon as we add those tokens,
so I'll do that.
you will, yeah, you can do it while I talk. You will get the option to pay with Stripe, basically. We will also, after we've done this locally and confirm that everything works, deploy it to Vercel and show you how to add tokens to your Vercel account as well. Because that's where I was stuck most, at least.
Yeah, but I think that this is like the perfect example of where you would stumble usually when you go from local deployment to something live.
Yeah.
And it's nice that you understand the scope of your stack, essentially.
Exactly.
So if this went well, I am prompted now with Stripe here as my checkout method. So let's go and pay here. And boom. All right. So this should go through. Should be no problem. All right. So if this goes through eventually and generates my checkout page, I think like a nice next step went through. A nice next step would be to actually use our own tenant for this, right?
Yeah, but we can also add to the confirmation page here that since we have not provided any SendGrid tokens, you will not get the confirmation email.
Exactly. That's really nice of you to just mention.
Because everything is tailor-made, so and we don't presume that you are using SendGrid. We have made an example that SendGrid is an option to use here, but you can integrate with whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, precisely. So let's go and add our own tenant, shall we?
Yeah, do it.
So all right, so we're now using the public furniture tenant. Let's switch up, and we have been using one for our live events as well, which is a furniture live. We did that on the NextJS boilerplate last week. So I have this one here. And all right, I want to use that for both my service API, remember, and my frontend boilerplates.
You sure don't want to create a new one?
Yeah, but then we'll need to create all the contents and all the shapes and
Yeah, but just go through the process and show that here we can create more tenants, but go back to this one afterwards.
But I can create a new tenant right now and use the other one, right? Like you said. So I create a new tenant, let's test tenant live. So I'll create my beautiful tenant, and this is now created. It's here. If I select that, I'm already using this tenant now. So that, as simple as that, going in tenant and creating your tenant, you can go for it. All right, so I'll go and select this Livestream Furniture Shop tenant because it has some content that we've used with Diederik before. And here you can see that we have like an ID for my tenant and identifier, right, which should be resembling your tenant's name. So I will be using that for both my service API and my frontend boilerplate to have access to the tenant's content, right? So I will go here, and instead of furniture, I will use my I didn't copy it. I will use my furniture live shop, and I will do the same over for my service API. So here. Boom.
It's also worth mentioning another thing here, that if you are going to use the furniture boilerplate, there is actually a util in here inside of the front-end boilerplate here. The repo utils. We have something called a bootstrap furniture shapes JS. And what this does is create all the shapes to run the furniture boilerplate. Because of course there are some tenant-specific shapes here to get the layout that we suggest inside of this boilerplate, so that you will also need. So instead of copying and us creating a list somewhere, you can just run that util, it is what you need to provide is some tokens, as always, and the tenant identifier.
Exactly. So it's and it generates.
I've done this in the previous live stream.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the previous live stream, and it generates these shapes just as a touch point, I guess.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. So I see here that I have no orders, right? And again, we'll go through the entire round trip, and I have updated my beautiful tenant identifier name here for both this guy and my service API. That's the state I'm at. So again, I will just restart everything. Right, so this should be running my two boilerplates, service API and my frontend NextJS boilerplate. So if I go here, I should see a slightly different. I think we had it styled differently a bit for this guy. Yes, we had. Still beautiful though. So yeah, this is the example shop we had set up the last live stream. And let's go and purchase something like this. Beautiful green flower or that plant. A flower sounds more beautiful than plant. We'll add it to basket, and remember that previously it didn't work if we had incorrectly set up our service API, but currently now it does, which means that okay, everything is going in as planned. So I proceed to checkout.
Finally, for once in this live stream, everything is going as planned.
Yeah, almost. And I will choose to pay with Stripe again, just to make sure that now the process that I'm following is that I have my own tenants content and my own tenants access to the orders specifically. So I will place an order now to my own new, let's say, created tenant. So after this
is also something
you
can try on our live demo tenant as well, because it is connected with Stripe in the development mode. So, and that's why you're posting 42, 42, 42 all the way. That's when it comes for credit cards, because that's Stripe's test credit cards, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a Stripe test environment, obviously, but we see now that the order goes through, and we can see in our demo tenant that, okay, Stavros posted a new beautiful order. Okay, great. We have something in place. Cool. So we have the complete infrastructure deployed locally. So let's see how we can move that slowly but steadily in production and verify the steps in the way so that we don't just deploy everything and everything goes boom and we don't see anything happening. So how we can troubleshoot as we go. And that's my take on it, of course. Didrik, you're more than free to let me know if I make like if there's another approach more easier or more useful.
I think it's perfect, but let's just deploy them as soon as you run. And as usual in some deployments, when you run Vercel and you expect everything to work fine in production because it works fine locally.
Exactly.
But this is not the case because the environmental files that the service has created today or now only applies to the local environment for the service API.
Yes, exactly. So that's exactly the .env.local file for the service API, which means that after we create a project on Vercel, we will go in and overwrite the default environment variables for that project. So I will go through and just type Vercel, which is, of course, this is a prerequisite that you guys have a Vercel account, obviously, right? So after you do that, you just type Vercel, and this will be launched in production or development if you want to do it just as dev. So this guy is launching my project. Again, we've gone through this in the previous live stream, like how you can do an initial deployment where you go through Vercel, and if you want to set up a new project on Vercel, etc., etc. So just to make it a bit faster and easier for you guys to watch, I wanted to go through and just have something ready. So my deployment is now running. It's building. And
while that is running, we got another question here in the YouTube. That was quick. Now, what's the best process to add additional fields to the order, like postal address, for example?
Yes, I think this is in between. So this is exactly that's a beautiful question, because that's exactly what you would typically use and launch in between the service API and your front end. So the front end, if you think of it as a stack, so the front end is capturing the order, or like it creates the order object and passes that through the service API. The service API processes that with Stripe, and then if it goes well, then it pushes that to Crystallize. So if I think of the pieces here, so I will want to, of course, capture the additional information of the order in the service in the front end boilerplate. So if I want to add a special thank you text, or I want to add Didrik purchased that for Stavros, or whatever metadata I want, I will create that and have that when I'm able to go in the checkout and create the order. So in the front end boilerplate, and then in the service API, I will translate that to a Crystallize field where I can store in Crystallize and review that in my backend. And so it's an in-between process. Get the data in the front end, push that, just include this data in the post request to the service API, and from the service API, just use the additional metadata field in the order object to push that in Crystallize. So it's this process. Keep it smooth, and it goes through the layers, and you can handle, meaning that if you want to change a few things in the service API, you don't need necessarily to change your front end. So the front end can be kept the same. So that's the beauty, let's say, of it.
Yeah, because what you were saying is that, and now you can arrest me if I'm wrong, but the order API intake also takes some custom fields like meta fields, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can use that through the middleware to push that in Crystallize. But in order to go there, you can firstly push that to the service API. So if you want to do any additional, any additional logic.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So just sorry about that, but just as a very simple thing, maybe. Like a very simple example of that would be if you want to add shipping on an order, you can do that in the middleware. You can just verify if the cart price is, above $30, then do not add shipping, for instance. So this lies in between that layer. So that's why you have this process of going.
Basically, shipping logic to your
e-commerce store. Yes, any other kind of logic. It could be that if you add the special text, you charge $2 more.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just create another item there.
I guess it's like we always say, that we don't presume to know your business logic.
Exactly.
So Crystallize will never support everything.
Yes.
The business logic happens in the middleware or in the front end.
Exactly. So getting back to where we were on Vercel, so this has been deployed. The service API has been deployed. So what we need now to do is to actually pass these environment variables in Crystallize. So the .env file that we used previously, to just add things like the Crystallize API tokens and my Stripe tokens and Sengri tokens, etc., etc. So all of this can be accessed in that project that was created. So the API backend project, which is my service API. Under settings, environment variables. And here I can handle all the environment variables for this project. And just to add another variable is really simple with a new UI of Vercel. So it's essentially you just create a plain text. And if I wanted to add like a, let's say, as an example, I will do my, let's say, Sengri API key. And I would do here, and I would add my key here. Right? So, and this, if I will be able to select which environments I want that to be available. So if I want to, separate my Stripe environment, my development environment, my production environment, so my real actual account, I can do that here. So after you click save, this will generate an environment variable, just as done below. So as you can see, this is the Sengri API key, which I just added. But I have gone through just to save some time and added these guys here, which is exactly what were in the .env.local file in my service API. So I have my access token ID for Crystallize, my secret token for Crystallize, Stripe secret token, and my publishable key from Crystallize. And I've actually added the JWT token here that is in the Service API as well, which is used for things like authentication and the if you were to do the user login in the Service API. So this is where this is used, and also holds I think the cookies and card information.
Yeah. So basically, what you have here is the bare minimum for what you need to launch your e-commerce. The SendGrid is, of course, to send an order confirmation.
Yep.
JWT is for identification purposes, like you said, the service. Stripe, both of the Stripe keys are for payment, and then you have
Crystallize for your orders, essentially.
Yeah, access and tokens. So, of course, the Crystallize tokens are for communicating with Crystallize.
Yes, exactly. And now that I have launched my Service API, I want to test that it's working and that maybe the tokens were incorrectly set. So that's why I decided to go through that as a first step, and I did not deploy everything at first. So if I go to my deployment and I go to my last deployment, which is, of course, the newest one, I got my beautiful API Vercel app here. This guy. So this is a link for my application. Of course, this is prompted to you after you deploy in Vercel. It's this guy. So what I want to do now is I want to verify that, all right, this guy is correctly set up, and I can use that with my frontend boilerplate. So if I open my code here, I will go in and change the Service API that I'm talking to locally, right? Because why? Because I want to check that this guy is working, right? So again, let's go through this one. Oh yeah, so I have to relaunch this. So let's do dev. And now this will be, let's say, talking. I like using the word talk. It will be communicating with a Service API that is on Vercel now.
Oh, sweet.
Beautiful.
Is it working?
So we'll see. So the process here is that this is the first step where you fetch the data from Crystallize to actually see that this guy is actually talking to Crystallize. I should be able to at least add something to my basket.
Yeah.
Or I can go to checkout, and just to verify that my whole process is working, I say that I have my Stripe set up here, so I can complete my order. This would not be working if I had set something up improperly. So sorry about that zoom. Mouse, touchpads, beautiful. So this would be going through the Service API in Crystallize. So if I did everything correctly, I should see another order here. Looks like I did. All right. So this is a second step where I have part of the solution on live. Let's say, but it's accessible, and I have locally my my frontend boilerplate. All right. So next step is obviously to launch my frontend boilerplate also on Vercel. So I will do exactly the same process as I did with my Service API. So if I do Vercel, again, it will prompt you to create a new project. Go through the steps. Where's the code and things like that. But once this is done, you will be, of course, creating a new project in Vercel, and you should be able to see that project created here. So if I go to this guy, I can see that my next frontend is being launched. This is the deployment.
When you say here, not under Crystallize, but your Vercel.
Yeah. If you have access to Crystallize, then Vercel has like some serious authentication issues to solve.
But to your Vercel account.
Yeah, to your Vercel account. Yeah, sorry about it. Thanks for the correction.
Well, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, superhero. So it's what we have now is, of course, our front end is being deployed. And again, if we had like any hidden tokens that we wanted to use, we can add here. What we have, just in case someone is wondering, is that we have, as you probably have noticed, we have not been using these guys on our NextJS boilerplates in Vercel, I mean. So we have not added like the furniture identifier tenant, the tenant identifier somewhere in Vercel. That is because the .env file, of course, is pushed with Vercel. If we had that like in something like a git ignore and it will not be pushed, then it will not be there and prompt you that in that error. So in case you encounter something like that, just keep in mind that it could be perhaps of the token not being available. But of course, you can add that if you want to overwrite that. You can totally do that just by adding the environment variable like we showed earlier.
Yeah,
right,
the reason, the reasoning behind this is because we don't want to add tokens to GitHub, for example, just for security reasons. So the Service API has, I guess, all the environmental files ignored. That's why we added to Vercel as well. But since we are adding all the tokens to the Service API and not the boilerplate, we don't use, or we can add the environmental files to the boilerplate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So again, this is our live, let's say, implementation. So I will probably be able to add the basket, and this is the last step of us deploying something actually. So I'll go again and do the same process once more. Just purchase something just to make sure that everything's set up. Of course, I have no doubt that it's working. Yeah, that's kidding. Just kidding. Never say never. But
I'm glad for you. I'm glad for
you. So yeah, I should be able to see my last purchase here as well for my product. So that concludes that we have successfully set up something for both my Service API and my frontend boilerplate on Vercel. Of course, as next steps would be to, of course, change things in locally. And of course, you can use the deployed Service API if you want to, right? So it's now that it's up and it's steady and it's working, then it's available to be accessed locally as well. So you don't have to run two servers.
Yeah, of course, you can test on our Service API, but if you want to go into production, you need to create your own.
Yeah. But I'm saying that, like, if someone has launched his Service API like I did now, that I have something live, my own Service API, then I can use that locally, so I can save time and it's not too heavy on my machine. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. What you can do, of course, is change the domain names. It's way more beautiful to have a pretty name here than having the next frontend Crystallize name. But yeah, this is I think the only steps you would need, and of course add different payment gateways if you want to, or the ones that we'll be posting out soon. Add SendGrid keys, and it's pretty much these types of configurations that you want. Other than that, I think the setup is pretty nice, and it goes through like the steps so that you know that everything is set up properly. That's the important part. So you don't deploy everything and then you have, all right, my basket is not working. Why is it not working? Where do I find it? Is it my frontend boilerplate or is it my Service API that it's misconfigured? So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to show today and share.
Yeah, I think we can conclude on that for today. Of course, if there's any more questions, just reach out to us on the Slack community.
Yeah, I think that was pretty nice. And again, sorry for the delay to get live today. We had technical issues. But thanks everyone for joining. And like Didrik said, if you have like any questions on how you want to deploy that, or if you want to change some stuff, feel free to reach out. The Crystallize team is more than happy to assist. All right. So I think that's it. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for joining. For any issues that you should not be encountering, feel free to reach out.